I live my life a quarter mile at a time.
I am your father.
Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler. Unreal. Avengers!
Assemble.
How's it going, everybody? FinaticFilms podcast episode 6, I think. I can't keep track of podcast episodes. But we are here. It's after show number 2 for movie drafts. We just, yesterday, when you guys are watching this, 2010's Oscars draft was just released. But before we get into that, I got to welcome my guests today. Sasha had to leave. She had to run off, and she had some stuff she had to get done. But we still have the 2 guests from movie drafts. We had Benji and KOKI. How are you guys doing tonight?
Well, pretty good, mate. Not much has changed in the past 2 minutes, to be fair. No one's died. It's all right.
Yeah, I'm all right. Not much I can add.
Yeah, well, we just finished up another episode of Movie Drafts. Very interesting one. We did the 2010s Oscars, like I said, had subcategories this time. And we'll just kind of talk about, I'll run through the draft boards. I'll run through the draft results just real quick. If you have not seen the episode yet, which you should go check out if you had, KOKI had the number 1 overall pick. He took Emma Stone for her performance in La La Land, Daniel Day-Lewis for Lincoln, Alfonso Cuarón for Roma. He took Moonlight as his best picture, and for his snub, it was The Social Network, not winning best picture. Sasha went 2, had Bong Joon-ho as her director, Matthew McConaughey for Dallas Buyers Club, Spotlight as her best picture. Her snub was Lupita Nyong'o not being nominated for Us. And then she took Viola Davis for Fences. I was 3rd. I took Moonlight over La La Land as my snub. J.K. Simmons for Whiplash, Frances McDormand for 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, Birdman, and I took Damien Chazelle as my director. And then Benji had the wraparound, took Parasite, Natalie Portman for Black Swan, Casey Affleck for Manchester by the Sea, Inarritu for Birdman, and Tom Hooper over David Fincher for his snub. So guys, I want to ask, I'll start with KOKI. What do we think about this draft overall? How do you feel about your draft? How do you feel about the other people's drafts? What are your thoughts?
I can't speak too much about how others feel about how strong they thought their draft was, but I'm feeling pretty good about my draft. I was able to select, I believe, 3 of my number 1s in terms of each of the categories when I went through each of these categories and sort of compiled like these long lists of what I seen, and I was able to get my number 1 selection for best actress, my number 1 selection for best actor, and my number 1 pick for snubs. So I feel pretty good about that. And in the 2 categories where I wasn't able to get my number 1 choice, I was able to get my number 2 choice in 2 fairly deep categories. So I'm feeling pretty good personally.
Yeah, I think overall your team's really solid. I think getting Social Network as best picture for your snub in the 5th round is a great value pick. I think there were some pretty good value picks in the 5th round. I think, just speaking from my draft, I think Damien Chazelle going in the 5th round for La La Land is I thought was a pretty good value pick. And yeah, I'll ask you next, Benji. What are your thoughts about this draft? How do you feel about your team? How do you feel about others? What are you thinking?
I'm fairly confident. I think I'm in with a chance. Like, I don't I think everybody has a really good draft though, because, like I said, it's 10 years worth of films. There's probably going to be about at least 4 that people all agree with. And then there's usually the other half, like people 5 years later debate. So I think everybody's in with a chance for sure. I really can see anybody winning. After listening to it, I thought maybe Sasha had the best. But then I think that Parasite was a really strong one to have, wasn't it Sasha who took director?
Sasha took Bong Joon-ho.
I think people fall more for director than they do picture, mainly because of his director winning speech, which is like the best thing ever. I feel like that would really help. I was really tempted to go with J.K. Simmons for Justice League as the snub, but I decided against it.
You're still on me for that.
Did you
I
see?
blanked on his movies, and the only one I could come up to my head was the stupid Justice League movie.
I don't want to be arrogant, mate. I understand, but it was just it wasn't what you said. It was just the idea of it actually happening. It was making me laugh, and then throughout the
It
whole
is funny,
thing,
though. Yeah,
it would
exactly.
the thought of it would pop in my head, and I just like had to like turn away and like try not to laugh. But the problem is, when I try not to laugh, like I like swallow back in like my breath, and it makes my stomach rumble. So then I was getting paranoid that people could hear my tummy rumbling. It was like, oh my god, this is like the worst.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that J.K. Simmons for the Justice League is not going to get nominated, but that was the pick I was happiest with tonight was J.K. Simmons, because I thought he might go in the first round, and if not, I thought Benji might take him with the wraparound. But to get him in the second round, I felt I was happy with. I took Moonlight over La La Land with my first pick for snub. Look, probably could have gotten in the fifth round. Probably could have gotten some better snubs. But it's kind of just the situational, just what was going on at the time with how the awards were panning out. It was such a shocking moment. If the category was moment, it's probably number one. But I'll die on that hill. I will die on that hill taking that with my number 3 overall pick. But I just the closing thoughts about this. This is probably, I thought Best Picture winners was really close, but I think this is even closer because I just think that just the sheer amount of quality that was taken off the board for each team. I'd say at least 4 of the 5 picks, I'd say for a few teams, all 5 picks are really solid picks. So, I mean, we'll see.
I was waiting for somebody to like pull like the mega surprise, be like green, but for Best Picture.
I was very tempted to say that before I took Birdman, just as a joke.
I was curious. I was tempted to try something out where I just pick a load of picks just as a joke and see people on film Twitter go, that's funny, I'm gonna vote for that. But then I was like, I'm gonna take it seriously. I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah, if someone picked Bohemian Rhapsody, I think I would have like left the set.
Oh,
I
mate.
think I would have just like I just would have left.
Someone say it takes Rami Malek or something.
One of the many snubs I had in mind was Rami Malek over Christian Bale. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but
yeah, totally.
I tend to agree with that. Yeah, I think that I talk about Rami Malek a lot, and then I always end up bringing up Taron Egerton the year later. I just the year later, I believe the category was more stacked, but what Egerton did in Rocketman was just exceeded Rami's performance like tenfold, just sheerly from the fact that he sang and sounded really good, and Rami did a lot of lip sync and stuff like that.
Actually did well.
So yeah, I mean, that just shows how just quickly the Oscar landscape can change just each year with the performances and stuff. So that's very interesting. But I already have my, I this year's Oscars, which we'll talk about, let's just hop into it. Everyone go check out Movie Drafts if you haven't. I mean, it was a lot of fun as always. Go vote in the poll. It'll still be up, and pick who you think's got the best team. But let's talk about the Oscars, because I know you guys are both big into the Oscars, big into the awards season, as am I.
Absolutely.
It's this Sunday. It's finally happening. The end of April got pushed back about 2 months from when it usually comes out. And some of the categories seem like they're pretty decided. But then there are some that are absolutely chaotic and crazy, and we have no idea what the heck is going to happen. So I'm going to start with KOKI. We'll get more specific in a bit, but I'll just ask. I'll ask you just for your overall thoughts on this kind of the overall Oscar race and what we've been seeing so far this year in the awards season, and what surprised you, what's hasn't surprised you, things like that.
What's been difficult about this year is just how difficult it's been to sort of track it, given how delayed everything is and how some of these movies are coming out even are being watched by people after the nomination because it's just not very readily available, like a movie like The Father, and it's just been a really weird and awkward Oscar campaign season. But I look at this list of nominees, at least with the Best Picture nominees, and I see a list of movies that aren't as great as, and none of them are really even close to, say, A Social Network. But I think a lot of them, but I think the floor is extremely high with this list, with these list of nominees. I'm not a huge fan of The Father, but outside of that, I think I at least respect or like every single other movie. I have some problems with Promising Young Woman. We talked about that a little bit on my podcast. But I just think that, unlike most years, there isn't a stinker here. There isn't a movie I look at and just kind of give a side eye to, like your Green Book, or especially like a Bohemian Rhapsody.
Oh yeah.
And The Father's really the only one I think is like teetering around the mediocrity line, and I think that's kind of a hot take on my part. So, but at the same time, like, I don't know, it's just a solid, pretty deep group of movies.
You think The Father's mediocre?
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to fully explain why. For me, I think the Anthony Hopkins performance is unbelievable. And that's not anything to do with it. And I just think there's a lack of self-awareness with this movie, where it's kind of predictable what it's doing, especially if you kind of know a little bit of what it's trying to do heading into the movie. And I think that was part of the problem with my evaluation of it. But at the same time, there's just a arrogance that the filmmaker has here, and you feel like each like reveal that he has, it feels like, oh, I've just stunned the audience with this reveal, when it's kind of predictable in the first place. You kind of feel the beats, and it just didn't really connect with me for that reason. There's like one of the main reasons why I like a movie is because there's a self-awareness to it, and it just has a total control over what it's doing. This movie thought it had control, but doesn't actually have control of what it's trying to do. So,
I did my ranking for the Best Picture films for my channel. I'm gonna have it up before the Oscars, as I kind of like just rounding it all off, like a final goodbye to award season. And I really struggled because I genuinely really like all of them, and I couldn't believe it. But once I'd finished my ranking, Sound of Metal came at the bottom, and I was like shocked at myself.
I mean, it is kind of tough. The Father is the last one I have to see. Excuse me. I'm going to watch it this weekend. And for everyone, disclaimer, because I'm saying this weekend, we're recording this the Friday before it goes out. I just want to make that quick disclaimer. I'm going to watch it this weekend because I'm going to have my Best Picture ranking up on my channel this next week as well. So that's the last one I haven't seen. I've seen the rest of them. It's tough. It's like KOKI said, where, and I haven't seen The Father, so I can't say that, but there really is not a stinker here. There really isn't. I think this year, at least for the Oscars, I think they relatively got it right when it comes to Best Picture.
I agree.
I think all the movies here are very stellar for the year that we got. We didn't get everything that I think may have been nominated this year. Some of that stuff's going to come out this year that we're in now. But I mean, it's actually kind of impressive how stacked this Best Picture race is. And we kind of know where it's going to go. There could be a surprise, but we have a pretty good picture. But that doesn't take away from the fact that, the category is really stacked. But Benji, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked KOKI, just for your general just thoughts. I know you've been covering award season pretty thoroughly as well. What's been your overall thoughts? Kind of what's been surprising, not surprising about this award season so far?
The most surprising thing for sure, and the most disappointing thing for sure, is that for some reason all these award shows seem to think that Gary Oldman's better than Delroy Lindo in Da 5 Bloods. That's just not something I'll ever really be able to make sense of. And at one point before, obviously, Chadwick Boseman passed and we became more aware of The Father, I thought he had a really good shot at winning. He was my favourite performance of last year, and it will forever upset me the fact he couldn't even get a nomination. And if out of any category at all I could pick like one redeemer where I could talk somebody out, it would be that, because like I just don't get the mindset of anybody who would vote like Gary Oldman's good in Mank for the type of role and type of film it is. He does a very good job. But I, if I'm being honest, if I was told by the great gods I could get Daryl Lindo in, but I had to swap him out for even somebody like Steven Yeun, I may do it because I think he's that good.
Well, I'll ask Koki. I'll ask you your opinion because I know you love Mank. I was like, I believe your favorite movie of this past year. So I'll ask your
Yeah.
opinion on that. What do you think about potentially Delroy Lindo swapped, Garrett Oldman swapped for Delroy Lindo?
I agree. Delroy Lindo should be on this list. That's not the reason why I'm going to. But I also think that it would be egregious that if Gary Oldman wasn't nominated for Best Actor this year, I think that would be pretty egregious. I think that he's unbelievable in this movie. I think he's way better than he was in Darkest Hour, which is just a very Oscar-y, Oscar bait sort of film. I mean, he's playing a historical character, and it just kind of, and he's very good in the movie, but the movie's just fine, and it isn't, and it certainly isn't Joe Wright's best film by any means. But with Mank, I mean, he's doing some incredible acting in this film, and just playing or just a really unique and kind of nasty character, but doing it in a way that you can also relate to in a certain way. And also he just brings that sort of Gary Oldman presence to this total buffoon. And I just love Mank for very nuanced and detailed reasons, especially when I watched it the second time. When I watched the second time, and especially when I watched it the third time, even, it just really hit with me just how incredible that film is, and all the themes that it's talking about, and how much it really cares about Hollywood. And I love movies about Hollywood. It's part of the reason why I like La La Land, and even like an older film like Singing in the Rain as well. It's just, because it's just such an interesting subject to talk about. The Player is another movie about making movies. But I mean, I think Mank is beyond excellent.
Yeah, well, then I'll ask you, who if you were going to put Delroy Lindo in, who would you take out? I mean, it's pretty stacked category, but who would you take out?
I would lean Steven Yeun, because I'm just not 100% sure if he's actually the leading actor in the movie. He's not in Minari as much as I thought he'd be. It's almost more of a supporting performance. There wasn't really a leading performance in that movie.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he should be nominated, though. I think it would be crazy if you didn't nominate him for something, but I don't know if he's necessarily a leading actor. And is that a leading part? I'm not. There's a lot of category fraud this year, especially with what they did with the Juice and the Black Messiah performances. Having them both be supporting, that was funny. Yeah, I mean, it's better to have them both in than not, or have one in, one not. So I'm okay with it, but it's also just like really funny, the category fraud that the Oscars do.
Now you bring that up, I don't think there's really much of a shot that's happening. I do think it's going to be Daniel Kaluuya, but at the same time, I do think the fact that all these people took a risk and rallied together to get Lakeith Stanfield a nomination. What do you think of the possibility of the vote for Judas being split and it maybe going to somebody else?
I think Stanfield's actually better than Kaluuya in this movie, and part of it's not because of like Kaluuya's bad or anything of that. I think he's unbelievable, and Kaluuya's one is probably the best under 35 actor we have today. But I think Stanfield's performance and how difficult of a role that is, and Jack and I talked about this in depth on my podcast, but I think it is the best performance of his career. And that's just such a hard, and just that's such a weird role to play as the starring role of your movie, when you're playing a character who isn't an outwardly bad person, isn't an outwardly good person. He's just a flat out coward. And it's hard to create any sympathy for someone who is for an actor who's outwardly being a coward, and B, not being very overly performative. It's not a very overly performative performance, right? Which is what you see a lot of these Oscar nominations and Oscar wins as, right? You think of like a Brie Larson in Room, even though I really like that performance, that's a really outward performance. Think of Cate Blanchett in Blue Jasmine. That's a very, very Oscar-y sort of overly performative performance. He's kind of has to be laid back, and he's very internal in this movie, Stanfield,
yes.
right? And the fact that the Oscars were able to recognize that performance is just really, really exciting and a great sign that things are actually changing in the Academy, and it kind of makes me a little bit more optimistic for the future of the Oscars. But but overall, I just think he I think it's the best performance of his career, and I would love to see if he won this. But there's a small chance that there's a vote splitting here, but it sounds like Kaluuya is just going to walk with this, right?
Yeah, like it's an interesting thing to talk about, but I do just think it'll be Kaluuya.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been kind of obvious from the start. I think Kaluuya he's taken home everything pretty much. I think taking home everything, and I don't think I see that going any different way. But let's talk. Let's lean over to the lead actor category. So this was a very interesting thing that I was seeing after the BAFTAs, and I want to get both of your guys' opinion on this. So it's been kind of thought and known for a while that Chadwick Boseman was a shoo-in to take this award. And he had the momentum. He's won everything leading up to the BAFTA. And then Anthony Hopkins takes the BAFTA. And now people are starting to say, well, there may be a scenario where Hopkins slides in and takes the Oscar from Chadwick. Now, I can't comprehend that because of the momentum Chadwick's had. And the performance is just really good. But this is also coming from someone who has not seen The Father and is going to see it this weekend before the Oscars happen. But I want to get both of your guys' perspective, and this time I'll start with Benji. What do you think of this new potential that Hopkins may take this steal this Oscar away from Chadwick?
In my BAFTA reaction video, it's weird. Like I was disappointed, but then at the same time, like I wasn't. I felt really conflicted in my emotions, so I just kind of like sat there for 30 seconds, going, "Oh no!" But basically, I think Hopkins is better than Boseman, if I'm being honest, even though Boseman is fantastic in Ma Rainey. I probably prefer to see Boseman win by a sliver because I say they're both equally as good, but when he's passed away and it's the last opportunity to give it to him, it seems like the right thing to do. And, you know, Hopkins has won before. And it's not like, you know, Hopkins doesn't need another Oscar to be respected. You know, it's Anthony fucking Hopkins, you know, but I also think that Hopkins can win now. A lot of people have been like, oh, Boseman's won everything else. It's just British bias. I agree the fact Hopkins is British has something to do with it. But at the same time, it is just a great performance. And Tilda Swinton, Mark Rylance, and Olivia Colman are examples of people. Right, Olivia Colman got Golden Globe comedy musical, but that's not as much of a big deal. But even Mark Rylance and Tilda Swinton, and then also Olivia Colman, they only got BAFTA before going on to win the Oscar, and they're all British as well. So it shows it can happen again.
KOKI, what do you think?
This felt like a really BAFTA thing to do to not give the award to Chadwick Boseman, despite the fact that he has that great performance in the movie, even though that might not be his best performance that year. He's incredible in The Five Bloods. He plays this character that shouldn't work by any standards because he's almost too righteous, right? He's like a god amongst men, basically. And he plays it off as this guy, and as someone who, I think Wesley Morris in the New York Times wrote about this beautifully, is that Chadwick Boseman's true talent as an actor was being able to play these really, really righteous and moral characters that, you know, usually when you have a main character, they're really likable, but there's always some sort of pitfall with them, right? Or some sort of moral downfall. And it's just to sort of round out the character, that they're not all Ferris Bueller from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. They're not perfect, right? You need to have some sort of flaw, right? Because it's just maybe not moral flaw, but some sort of flaw as a character. But with Boseman in this movie, he has to play this guy who's pretty much a god amongst men and do it in a fairly convincing fashion, right? And he does it perfectly. He does it perfectly with Black Panther as well. He's done this a few times in his career, and you know, in this movie, I just think so, like, god amongst men sort of role that he plays really, really worked with me. And I think The Five Bloods is kind of a flawed movie, but I think his performance is arguably the best part of it.
I mean,
Oh,
absolutely.
fair enough. I mean, I do love The Five Bloods, to be fair. It's actually one of my very favorite films of last year. So you know how there was 8 nominees and they can have up to 10, but they never do.
Yeah.
So say if you could fill in those, like you were given the responsibility of filling in those 2 spots. It could be any film from last year. What you give it to?
One for me is definitely Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. Have you seen this movie?
Yeah, I have.
It's kind of chilling, especially in that in that scene where you sort of understand what why the movie is called Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always.
Yeah.
And it's just a really special film. It's hard to sort of describe it without kind of spoiling it in a way. I would assume, I think anyone who listens to this has probably hopefully seen the movie in some sort of fashion. So I don't want to get into the details too much, but I mean, as terms of indie movies go, it's arguably the best of last year. I'm just looking at my list. And then it's also weird to me that the small acts movies never got any like any resemblance of recognition when it came to the Oscars, because those are movies. This is the 5 movies that Steve McQueen did, or short films, or whatever you call them. And I think Mangrove is incredible. I think that movie really, really hit me. And I watched it the second time and it was just as great. The first half being this really, really intense drama, with the second half being more of just a courtroom drama, but both are just as intense. Both are just as engaging, and it takes a lot of the issues of that the trial of the Chicago 7 was trying to tackle, and just does in a lot more of nuanced and interesting way. And I know Jack has seen all the Small Axe movies, but that was one of the great pleasures of last year, just being able to watch those 5 films at home.
Yeah, those were all an experience, and I don't know why people are saying they're in, like, I know for some of the awards they were in like TV movie or like something serious or something like that. Like I know Boyega won a few awards for his In Red, White, and Blue, but they are movies. I mean, Mangrove is like a full length feature. Like,
Yeah.
they are movies. So so I tend to agree with that. I mean, if I were to add two. I mean, I really liked One Night in Miami, personally. I enjoyed that movie. I thought the performance was really well. I thought Regina King, with what she was trying to do, it's the whole stage play into real movie thing that we talked about kind of in the draft as well. It doesn't always work completely, and I'm not going to say that it worked completely in this either, but for what it did for the performances, I think it just missed out. So I would probably give it to that. And then if I had to pick between two, I mean, Soul is a fantastic movie. I mean, that movie just for animation is just brilliant. But I would probably go with Another Round. That movie was an experience, and just the way that Vintenberg directed, the way that the storytelling is, how it goes back and forth from the writing to actually what's going on screen. And just the performances, not even just Mads Mikkelsen. I mean, Mads Mikkelsen is absolutely brilliant in this film, but like all the supporting performances as well are really good. And obviously, it was good enough to get Vincenberg a nomination. So that's probably the one that I would give my 10. I mean, I just really enjoyed it, and it was a very pleasant surprise at the end of last year. That's probably what I would pick.
Absolutely. Oh, The Five Bloods have definitely be one. I'm flip-flopping between a few films, but purely because I think animated films go quite underrepresented in Best Picture, I'll probably give it to Soul.
Yeah, it's a great pick.
Yeah,
Soul is in my top 5 of the year, so
mine as
It's
well.
great. I love. Oh, mine as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that film is like Pixar at its finest. I think we can all agree on that.
Yes.
And I mean, just everything about it. I would watch, even watching it at home on Christmas Day, like just on a TV at home, it's still just hit the emotions, and the animation still was as vibrant and beautiful. Now, I would like to go back and watch it in the theater, because I think that it would be just as good, if not better of an I mean, it'd be a better experience obviously in the theater, but that film, it's going to win best animated, and rightfully so, and it'll win score as well, because that score is brilliant as well. But yeah, I mean, let's talk about, because I almost got off track there. Best lead actress.
100 Days, who I'm
What
predicting.
the hell is going on in that category?
It's probably the craziest I've ever seen it. I mean, obviously I'm young, but it's the craziest I've ever seen it in my lifetime.
Every televised event so far has had a different winner.
It's mental, isn't it? Yeah.
It's just
usually this is set in stone, because last year, you remember, I mean, Renee Zellweger had this baby locked up and loaded by September.
Like,
you know,
yeah, even
we
before,
knew she was gonna win. But this year, it just looks like it's anyone's game. It's not. I would be pretty stunned if Vanessa Curry won, but I think the other four have a chance. All four of them. So
some people for some reason are predicting that, you know, all four on somewhere, so now it's got to be, oh, I keep putting my leg up, it's so embarrassing, I just want to get comfortable. Some people are predicting Vanessa Kirby because of the fact that like everyone's won everywhere else, so now like she needs to win. That's just stupid in my opinion. I think it's going to be Andra Day, if I'm being honest. I think we got another Regina King situation.
You know, I have not seen the U.S. vs. Billie Holiday. I have to get into the mental space to watch that film, because I've heard it's not great besides Andra Day's performance. I gotta watch that this week. I think I just got it, because from what I'm hearing, that's a legit possibility, and it's just because of how volatile this category is. Now, I would personally really like to see Carey Mulligan win, because I know KOKI is not as big on Promising Young Woman, but I really enjoyed Promising Young Woman. I think her performance in that is fantastic. But I don't know.
Some people are predicting Carey Mulligan, even though she only has just a Critics' Choice win, and that's just such a rare thing to happen. It could happen. This does seem like the year that it could happen, but with just Critics' Choice, I don't want to predict that. Like, Critics' Choice is good for predicting technicals and Best Picture, but when it comes to acting, I kind of leave it.
Okay, then that makes sense. But then I'll ask you then. So Andra Day, she won the Golden Globe, and that's the Hollywood Foreign Press. So does that carry much weight? Because the Critics' Choice is like the critics here in the U.S. So it's kind of relatively like the same voting pools. So what is it about Andra Day that is attractive for you, for her to take home the Oscar? What do you think that is?
Well, like, first and foremost, she is killer in the US, Billie Holiday, and I almost feel like maybe it being a bad film helped her, because like when it's 100, it's mainly just her. She's in basically every scene, and when she is on the screen, you'll just say like, "Thank God, I've at least got something." Otherwise, I'd literally won't be able to make it through this film, and I feel like that will help her a lot. Also, you know, Judy Garland, etc., etc. The Oscars have proven that they do love to see people play other famous people, especially you know, like people like Judy Garland, like when Renee Zellweger won. And I know that US Billie versus Billie Holiday had screener issues. I mean, not that it was going to contend anywhere else outside of costumes and actress, but I feel like this may be another Regina King year, and I feel like she's probably going to win. Well, actually, I don't want to say she's probably going to win, but she she just takes the edge for me. I can see literally any of the other women winning, but she takes the slight edge for me.
So KOKI, what do you think? I'm going to put it over to you. I mean, who do you give the edge to in this category?
I really don't know. I want to say Frances McDormand, but the fact that she's already won is I believe she's won twice already, actually. So that's probably a drawback in terms of that nomination. There's the Viola Davis nomination, but she's also already won. There's there's Carey Mulligan, right? And she has an interesting case. But again, she's not playing a famous person. She's playing a movie that was kind of divisive in a way, and so upfront and I won't say divisive again, but just so really upfront and strong that it might scare away some voters. And I'm kind of surprised that this movie even got. If you watch the movie, it just does not seem, look, or feel like an Oscars movie, because it's just so independent and to the point and not afraid to go there, and you don't. A lot of Oscars movies never quite go there, and that movie really does. And that's kind of why I respect the nomination in a way, even though it isn't like my favorite movie of the last year and a half. But I lean. I think Benji makes a great case for Andra Day since she played a famous person, and I don't know. To me, it's probably between Andra Day and Carey Mulligan, but I wouldn't be stunned if Norman Davis won. So I don't have a great feel for this. I just don't really have a good feel at all for this one.
Also with Carey Mulligan, bearing in mind Promising Young Woman, it calls out men and the way they treat women, and bearing in mind the Academy is so overwhelmingly got a male majority of members, I feel like a lot of people who do hate Promising Young Woman are like men. I'm not saying I know you're not a big fan of it, KOKI, and that's fine, mate, but like I know a lot of men don't like it purely because it calls them out and makes them uncomfortable.
No, that's not why. I just want to say quickly, that's not why I don't love it quite as much as some other people. I still gave it like 3 out of 5 stars, which isn't that bad. It's
not
fine.
bad, no. Yeah,
no,
I understand. But I do feel like it will make the Academy members who do feel like that just won't vote for Carey Mulligan. They won't want to give that film more representation.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, Vanessa Kirby's the least likely, but still, it could be any of the 5.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely the category everyone's going to be most excited to see what happens when Oscar night comes around.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I am too. A lot of them are, I wouldn't say completely wrapped up, but we kind of know where director's going to go. We have an okay idea where Best Picture is going to go. Screenplay might be up in the air a little bit. The male acting categories, besides now lead, are pretty set in stone. But you know what? The Oscars could surprise, and if they do, that'll make it a way more fun night than we think it might be. But yeah, I mean, I think that's it for Oscar talk. I mean, I'm very interested. I'm just very interested to see what happens. I mean, it's one of the best nights of the year, even if it's 3.5 hours long with commercials after every award, which is just annoying. But
yeah,
we'll
I mean, every year there has to be one big surprise. Like last year was Bong Joon-ho. Year before that was Olivia Colman in Best Actress, and I really want to know what that'll be this year.
It might be Andra Day because I think that's the one category where I could see a surprise, because it's so up in the air that it won't really be a surprise because we have no idea. So that kind of gives the Academy the opportunity, like, okay, well, no one knows what the heck's going to go on, so let's just do it and just put it out there.
Yeah, but
we'll see. I'm very interested because at least last year with the acting, it was all 4 categories we knew who was going to win. We just knew because they had won everything. Dern, Zellweger, Pitt, and Joaquin, they won everything. So we've got at least
that's why I like this year.
Yeah, we've got at least one category that is pure chaos, and we've got like 2 that are, supporting actress. I don't think is completely tied up. It's a little more. We have a little more of a picture of it, but
well, like
you guys agree that last year's movies were just better than this year's movies?
I mean, I'll just say for movie drafts, the first category we did in episode 1 was 2019 movies, because that's just such a great year for film.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I tend to wholeheartedly agree. I think that 2019 was just an insane year for all types of films, indie films, big blockbuster films, at all of them. It was just a huge year.
I do agree. 5-star films that year. But this year I don't have any, for example. So
what were you afraid?
Like the 3, Parasite, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I'm disappointed we didn't talk about on the Oscars, show. And I'm obsessed with Tarantino, of course. And then Little Woman. I'm obsessed with Greta Gerwig.
I love Little Women. I'm so happy you say that.
Oh
I'm
my
so
god,
happy you
I've
say
watched.
that.
Yeah, I've watched it 4 times. It's just so
I
good.
don't blame you, mate. It is good. I was thinking about going with Brad Pitt for supporting actor, but I didn't. It's a good win.
It's a good performance.
I mean,
It's a good performance.
He's an incredible. I think he's incredible in that movie. He's arguably. There's a really good case to be made that he's not the supporting actor in that movie. That the movie is secretly more about him than with the DiCaprio character, even though the movie's technically about the DiCaprio character. But I think we learn more and are more interested in the movie's more interested in the Pitt character. Am I right to say that?
Yeah. Actually, thinking about it, like that, it's more interested in his backstory.
Yeah, I tend to say so. I think like Leo is the lead, but we are following Pitt more, and we're more interested in what he's doing than what Leo's doing. I would say for a majority of the time. That's what I would say, at least. I mean, I think Pitt's character in that movie is great and hilarious at times too.
Yeah, and it wasn't just those. Yeah, go ahead.
I think I could have done without Leonardo DiCaprio getting nominated that year if it meant we could have got Taron Egerton instead.
Well, I strongly disagree.
Oh, well, okay, that's fair.
I think that was the best performance of Leo's career, and I die on a hill on that take.
Wow,
my hot take.
Really?
Yeah,
Over like
because he put anytime Leo pulls off comedy like he does, like this movie and The Wolf of Wall Street are probably two of his best performances, and the reason why is just like it's just that movie star presence he's able to bring, and that like real trained actorness that he has, but he's also able to pull off this just ridiculous comedy to go along with it. I don't know. He just fits with Tarantino so well. And both the movies that he's done with Tarantino, it's two of probably his 5 best performances, and that's not a surprise. And The Wolf of Wall Street, which is not a Tarantino movie, of course, but that's also toward the top, where he's kind of off his rocker a little bit. That's kind of the Leo that I enjoy, when he's not this polished product that you see in like Titanic, which is a movie I can't stand. But yeah, go ahead.
I think that The Revenant and his performance is way overrated. I think his best performance is Wolf of Wall Street for sure.
That's what I was going to say too. Yeah, I think he's just off his rocker in The Wolf of Wall Street and
The Departed as well. I think that's The Departed
that's a vastly, as someone from the Boston area, that is a vastly underrated performance because he pulls off the Boston accent very well in that movie. The Departed, that is.
I love The Departed. It was my first Martin Scorsese film I watched, and was it a good one to watch first?
I mean, I think my first 2 Scorseses were The Wolf of Wall Street and The Departed, and then I started to get into his filmography. Two bangers to start off with. But yeah, so that's kind of it with Oscar talk. I think we're gonna pivot just a little bit. Have you both had the opportunity to see this week's episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier?
No.
No.
Oh no.
KOKI.
I'll let you both talk about it. I'm not too worried about it. Right, I'm not all that fussed.
Let's not get into spoilers, but and we don't have to talk too much about it. But I will ask KOKI your general non-spoiler, so we don't ruin it for Benji. What are your general non-spoiler thoughts on this episode that just happened this last night?
Well, one of my problems with the show so far has been the fact that it's been jumping around a little bit too much, and I think it's similar to WandaVision. It's doing too much. There's probably too many plot lines, but I feel I like the fact that the show has slowed down from a pacing perspective, so we can sort of grasp our characters a little bit better. There's even moments that I felt like in this episode where it was almost too slow, which is I think is a good thing. These Marvel products do need to go a little bit slower at times, but I think with this episode in particular, I liked it. I thought it was good, even though I do think it has some. It's a bit messy, and we're jumping from place to place again, like we were in episodes 1, 2, and 3. These 4 was more of that straight through line, and I loved that. I was obsessed with that episode because of just how I was able to tie in all its themes so effectively with that really amazing ending, and able to bring in these really adult themes and blend it in with all the stuff it's doing with this plot. And it just made you think a lot, while also developing the characters in a really effective way. I've been praising Wyatt Russell to the moon this for the entire show, and I think he's really excellent in this episode as well. Not everything works quite as well in this episode. It's not quite as smooth, like I said, but I still think it's a pretty effective episode.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I go back and forth on whether this or the last episode is my favorite episode. There are moments in each that really stand out to me, that really pack a really nice punch. The thing I think about this episode is the fact that, and I'm going to try to say this as much without spoiling, is we get more intimate moments with the characters in this episode.
Yeah.
I think the last episode was we're on a mission, we're fighting, we're trying to figure this out, we're trying to do it, we're trying to catch the flag smasher, we're trying to do all this stuff, which is great. And that ending is the best cliffhanger in any MCU TV show, probably besides the Evan Peters reveal in WandaVision, which then ended up being one of the most disappointing cliffhangers. But I really like how intimate this episode was. And there are a few conversations that happened in this episode that I felt were very meaningful, and really worked for me. And I really dug it. And I'm very interested to see how they tie up the season, because there is the potential for a second season. So I can kind of buy everything not being wrapped up in the next episode, maybe leave a cliffhanger for a second season. I know Sebastian Stan's done some interviews where he said he would do anything to do a second season. So I'm very interested to see how they tied up. But I also like the fact that they were able, and I'm not going to say what was tied up, but they were able to tie some stuff up this episode, put some bows on some things. And that's the thing I think WandaVision struggled with, was the fact that they had too many plot lines, too many plot holes, and were not able to tie things together until the last episode. And then, since there wasn't going to be a second season, they had to rush everything at the end, which I think the Falcon and Winter Soldier has a little bit more leeway to do, since there is the potential for a second season. So I really liked where they went about that. I'll ask you, Benji.
Mhm.
You haven't seen this episode yet, but I would love to know.
I haven't seen any of it.
Oh, you haven't seen any of it? Oh my gosh! Because I was going to ask you your overall thoughts on just the season as a whole.
I'm a terrible person, I know.
You're not a terrible person. I mean, I know you've been
just
heavy into heavy into the award stuff, so that makes sense. But
mate, I've been like, that's the thing. Like, I like award season, just because not only have I got my YouTube, I'm also over at Music City and also writing for Music City, and like, because award season's been longer this year, I've been just so submersed into it for so long, and like, I'm excited for the Oscars, but I'm also excited to get out of this and just really catch up on other stuff. Because like, when it's award season, like, I literally try and watch like everything, and it's, oh my god, is it
it's also the opportunity for you to get your sleep schedule in a better way.
Yes, that's another thing, because in the States you're 4 to 8 hours behind, and like, sometimes I'm interviewing people at like 3 a.m.
Wait, what time is it over there right now? It's 7:57 West Coast time.
It's coming up 4 in the morning.
Oh,
bro,
my goodness, what are you doing here?
You're a trooper, man. I mean,
yeah,
I was very hesitant inviting him because I knew, but then he told me, he's like, but I do this every night for Music City Drive-In anyways. And I'm like, okay, well, then that's his normal schedule. So
I don't mind. I enjoy it. I really appreciate it. I'd happily come on again. I really enjoy it. I do enjoy it. It's something I look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, the real heroes. I mean, I know Benji, because I write for Music City Drive-In as well. He just does a great job with the social media and everything. Is just, fantastic. So quick plug, go check out Music City Drive-In. I think all the people over there are doing great work, and Benji does a great job over there as well.
Just, hopefully we're building towards the dream of making it like, proper up there legit thing. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, from everything I've seen behind the scenes, I think we're going in the right direction, but we'll see.
Just like, not even for me, but for like just everybody there, like Ricky and Jacob in particular, like, they just work so fucking hard. It would just be amazing for them if they could just really get it to properly like boost.
Yeah, I mean, they are. They both work their butts off, but I think that's kind of it. That's kind of what we're going to talk about. I wanted to talk a little bit more about Falcon and Winter Soldier, but That's all right. You guys can go check out my review that came out
It
on
would.
Friday.
This would have been where it'd been better if Sasha stayed on.
But it's good because I like, because we talked in last week's podcast, we talked in depth about the last episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier. This week we got to talk more in depth about the Oscars, which is actually very timely because the Oscars are happening this weekend. So I actually prefer that we talked about the topic that's actually more timely with the Oscars. But that's kind of where we're going to wrap it up. I want to thank both Benji and Koki for staying on because, like I said, we filmed these back to back with movie drafts. So you guys have been troopers. So I appreciate you guys both coming on to the podcast today.
It's a pleasure, mate. I'll happily come on again.
Thanks, Jack. Finally, I'm the guest.
Yeah, I mean, I will leave Koki's podcast down below in the description. I've been a guest on there a few times. I'm pushing for the record of most guest appearances over there. But I will leave everyone's links down below in the description. I'll leave Benji's YouTube, Koki's podcast, all their social media links down below. You guys can go find me Music City Drive-In, Wolf of Geek Street Writing, Twitter, Letterboxd, here on YouTube, and make sure you go vote on the poll for movie drafts. It's still up until Friday. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you so much for watching or listening. I really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your guys' days, and we will see you in the next episode of the podcast.